Kia ora and welcome to Monday's Economy Watch, where we follow the economic events and trends that affect Aotearoa. I'm David Chaston and this is the international edition from interest.co.nz, and today we lead with news China is still stuck in its rut. The US is twisted by tariff talk, Japan sees progress, and Russia's currency gets a big downgrade. But first, this coming week will end with the US non-farm payrolls report, and analysts expect a sharp recovery to 183,000 added jobs, far higher than the unusual pre-election October report of just 12,000. Before that, they will deliver their JOLTs report, and there will be factory order data, more PMIs, and more sentiment surveys. And India will review its official cash rate. South Korea and Turkey will report their CPI inflation rates, and Australia will report its third quarter GDP on Wednesday, and there will be many other PMI reports. In fact, over the weekend, China said its official factory PMI made a tiny improvement to maintain a small expansion. It was the second positive result in a row, and its best since April. At the same time, the minor positive reading for its services sector disappeared. Taken together, this paints a picture of an economy without any expansion. We'll get the Caixin PMI data tomorrow, and that has tended to be marginally more positive recently. In Japan, their central bank boss said they're approaching a decision with a view that they will raise their policy rate from the current 0.25% to 0.5%. They like their current data track, but they hesitate because they don't have a firm fix on the damage the incoming US administration will do. Quote, "I'm not worried much about Japan's financial system because ample capital, stable deposits and access to liquidity have been assured," he said. In contrast, he noted that non-bank financial institutions are posing a grave problem in the US and added they deserve to be closely monitored. Japanese consumer sentiment recovered somewhat in November, still positive, but nothing like what they had from December to March earlier in the year. And Japanese retail sales rose 1.6% in October, recovering from the weak September expansion, but still much lower than what they have achieved monthly since early 2022. But at least it is back heading in the right direction. And Japanese industrial production rose 1.6% in October from a year ago, ending 2 months of retreat. South Korea's industrial production rose in October at a very strong 6.3% pace from a year ago after the unusual stumble in September, returning to the average expansion they have had since September 2023. So it'll be no surprise to learn that their exports kept rising strongly in October, as did their imports. But in November, the expansion was more modest for exports, and their imports actually slipped slightly. However, Korean retail sales slipped in October to be 0.8% lower than a year ago. India's economic expansion is consolidating, delivering a somewhat disappointing third quarter result. Their economy rose 5.4% from the previous year, slowing from the 6.7% expansion in the second quarter and well below market expectations of a 6.5% increase. It was their softest pace of growth since the fourth quarter of 2022. Still, even at the latest lower rate, it is rising on a per capita basis. This miss adds pressure on the Reserve Bank of India to cut its policy rate, which currently stands at 6.5%. They will review it next on Friday. The Indian currency fell on the news to a record low against the US dollar. Although not a record low against the New Zealand dollar, it has been close to that since the whole period from the end of 2020. In the US, early reports from card companies and industry monitors show that in-store retail sales growth for Black Friday sales was quite modest, even disappointing, and up only 0.7% from the same day a year ago. But online sales activity burst higher, up more than 14% on the same basis. In Canada, their third quarter 2024 growth came in 1% higher than a year ago, up 0.3% for the quarter. This was not enough to prevent a fall in per capita GDP, though. On that basis, it fell 0.4% in the third quarter, which was the sixth consecutive quarterly decline. In Europe, inflation expectations in the Eurozone for the year ahead edged up slightly in October to 2.5% and stayed steady for 3 years out at 2.1%, the ECB's monthly consumer expectations survey showed. EU CPI inflation rose to 2.3% in October, up from 2.1% in September, but still clearly in a downtrend that started in November 2022. In Russia, Their currency suddenly fell over the weekend to near record lows, a record if you exclude the full invasion spike in 2022. The falls were not only versus the US dollar, but the Chinese yuan as well. The economic pressure on the Russian economy is mounting as it suffers severe distortions and indigestion the longer it presses its invasion of Ukraine. In Australia, private sector debt rose 6.1% in October from a year ago, driven primarily by business debt growth, up 8.3% on the same basis. But housing debt growth was up 5.3% too. Other personal debt only rose 2.2% in October. From a Kiwi perspective, these are relatively fast rises. Late last week, equivalent RBNZ data showed business debt rising only 1.1% here, housing debt rising only 3.5% here, and personal debt only up 1.7% in the year to October. In Australia, there's some scepticism that their debt tide rise will be maintained. And their housing market is showing signs of exhaustion. November data shows sales volumes 4.6% lower than a year ago. The largest drop in volume in home sales has been in Sydney, where sales over the rolling quarter were estimated by CoreLogic to be more than 15% lower than a year ago. But that isn't easing their rental crisis, where vacancy rates are less than 1%. The US Treasury 10-year yield is now just on 4.18% and unchanged from Saturday, but down 23 basis points from this time last week. And the price of gold will start today at $2,649 an ounce, and down $10 from Saturday, and down $56 from this time last week. And oil prices are little changed. It's still just over $68.50 a barrel in the US, while the international Brent price is just under $72.50 a barrel. A week ago, these levels were $2.50 a barrel higher, so a retreat from then. And the Kiwi dollar starts today at 59.3 US cents and up 10 basis points from this time Saturday. But it is up a full cent from this time last week. Against the Aussie, we're up 60 basis points at 90.8 Australian cents. Against the euro, they were unchanged at 56 euro cents. That all means our trade-weighted index starts today at just over 68.6, a little change from Saturday, but up 50 basis points in a week. And the Bitcoin price starts today at $97,372 and up a minus 0.3% from this time Saturday. Volatility of the past 24 hours has been low, at plus or minus 0.9%. You can find links to the articles mentioned today in our show notes, and you can get more news affecting the economy in New Zealand from interest.co.nz. Kia ora, I'm David Chaston, and we'll do this again tomorrow.